Come on.
Welcome to Phoenix Rise Connect, where businesses, creators, and powerful ideas come together. We provide businesses with a platform to share their story, demonstrate their products, and connect with new audiences around the world. Through professional live interviews, engaging podcasts, and authentic conversations, we help brands build visibility, credibility, and trust.
Hey everybody, I was just saying to Jason, that's a quick 30 seconds for everyone to have their last sneeze or cough. How are we all this lovely 5 o'clock in the UK? I have got the one, the only Jason Euler with me this afternoon, and we are going to be talking the music business because I tell you what, there's plenty to say, especially what's going on in this day and age, isn't there, Jason?
Absolutely. Lots happening. The landscape is always shifting.
Shifting? I spent most of my night last night trying to shift my academy into pieces. It's like, what's going on? I thought I was getting involved in a mass world war. It's like people going on about AI, people going on about there's no money in the music industry, I'm going to quit. There's people going on about, like, what's the point? And I was like, that's how the music is. I don't know about you, being a promoter, you know, and working in the music. Do you feel like this at the moment? Your brain's going to explode?
Yeah, I think it's information overload, and you're just trying to keep up with all the advancements, changes, and technologies. But to improve is to change, to perfect is to change often.
I like that caption. That's staying with me.
I think Winston Churchill actually said that. So, you know,
I should not be British.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, the only constant in life is change. And, you know, it goes back to the age of adapt or die.
It is.
You know, so that's where I'm at. I'm learning to adapt right now.
Fantastic. So this is the first time to Phoenix Connect for Jason, and this is also a brand new series on the Scene Project, so where we are meeting businesses all over the music industry to bring the businesses to the singers and to the artists. Okay, so this is a brand new series. We are mixing and matching with several businesses. It could be from Wellbeing, as we have done with our lovely, lovely doggy that goes into businesses all over New York to help with the neurodivergent people over in their offices to keep them going, to medicine, to science, and to everything what goes on in the music. We've been bringing you AI tools. We have bringing you a new different business concepts. So Jason, tell everybody a bit about yourself and how did you very first get started in the music industry? Where did it all start for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I as of next month, I'll hit my 10-year in the music industry. And 10 years ago in 2016 in September, I went to my first electronic music festival. Friends dragged me. I didn't want to go. Prior, I'd listened to country music and other genres. And I guess I had the wrong stigma about electronic dance music. And reluctantly, I went. I get there and I ditch all my friends the moment I get to the festival. And I run around and start talking to strangers. And I get enveloped in the culture around electronic dance music. And I fell in love really quickly. End of that night came and my phone had died, and finally get my phone turned on and I called my friends and said, oh my God, that was amazing. Where can I meet you guys? I'm ready to go home. Turns out my friends had left about an hour earlier. They thought I left immediately because I hated it, which quite the contrary was happening. I had one of the best nights of my life, but here I am at 23 years old. I just finished playing professional and collegiate baseball. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, and Uber surge pricing, I think I paid $150, $160 to get home in an Uber that night at 23. And that was more than I paid for the entire ticket. Fast forward a few months, the next festival comes up and I bought my ticket last minute. And I go, crap, transportation. So I decided to rent a party bus. And I thought I'd maybe get 30 of my friends to come on. I had 75 people on the bus. You know, we had a big pregame at my house. And I made like $3,000 in a week, which was more than I was making at my corporate job during that time. But I didn't want to make money off my friends. It didn't feel right. You know, I was just trying to solve the transportation problem. I wasn't trying to make money off my friends. And I didn't want to Venmo everyone back because what a pain. So I donated the money to Phoenix Children's Hospital. And I got the receipt and the contact from the lady. And I put it in the group chat and said, hey, I donated the extra money to Phoenix Children's Hospital. If you have an issue, take it up here. And obviously, everyone who came on the bus was more than fine with that course of action. And that kind of became the trend. I started running party buses and I started donating a portion of the proceeds to support different nonprofits here in Arizona. And that's really where it started.
You know, so when you talk about sort of like the music scene over in the US, you talk about country music, you talk about rock, theatre music, film music, and things like that. But is the electronic scene big over there? Is it something that people are going to regularly?
It's massive. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the most, I think country music and electronic are probably the two leading things. And, you can always look to Coachella. Coachella really sets the global standard of where I think music interest lies. Over 60% of their lineup is electronic dance. They even added another stage in Quasar stage for electronic dance. Wow. They made the Yuma tent bigger to accommodate electronic dance. Obviously, touring a DJ is much easier. They show up with a USB and plug in versus every other genre. You got to tour a live band. You got 5 mouths to feed. You got to get all their gear and equipment there. It's twice the setup. So I just think it's much more easy to digest electronic music and tour it right now than any other genre. And the beauty of electronic music is you can take any genre and make it electronic dance music. So
yeah.
It's the 21st century. Of course, we're making music on computers.
Exactly. I was a DJ for several years. People know that. I was a DJ for about 10 years. Went into radio DJ. And I loved my gig days. I loved for the fact that some pubs I could just literally, like you say, take an MP3 stick with me at the time and become a DJ, because I didn't even have to carry my product. It was just literally set up for me there. I was the DJ for the night.
Or carry crates of records or things like that. You
take break it. And the parties, people are ready for parties, when they go to electronic DJ parties, I don't know whether than a gig, because obviously specifically for a gig, you're seeing an individual, you've got a ticket to say that individual. Once that individual stopped for his 90 minutes, probably they put the pub DJ on or the guest DJ on. But for your type of music, it must be a weekend festival. It just doesn't stop.
Yeah, in most cases. I mean, and that's kind of the fun, the beauty of it. I've been on like Groove Cruise and I work with them as well. That's 4 or 5 days on a cruise ship and the music runs 24/7 around the clock. You go to EDC and I mean, it's 12 hours straight, and then even that, there's the pool parties and things going. I've been to Burning Man 2 times, and Burning Man 24/7 around the clock. There's always music going on. So yeah, it's whereas like these, you go to Coachella and like there's breaks between sets and they got to move bands and things like that. You go to electronic dance, it's start to finish the whole way through. It does not stop.
So when when did you start thinking, do you know what, actually, I've got these party buses going. I'm starting to shape the music industry in my own mind. When did you think, do you know what, actually, I'm going to sort of like put this a bit further and I'm going to start working with artists and I'm going to start moving into the industry in a bigger way? When did you start doing that sort of thing?
It kind of happened organically and naturally. And even starting the party bus company, I wasn't trying to make money. I wasn't trying to start a business. I hit a problem where I got stranded without a ride, and I realized transportation to these festivals was a difficult thing. And then I realized other people had the same issue. From there, it went from 1 bus to 2 bus to 3. And eventually I'm transporting thousands of people to festivals. The company that ran the festivals that I was transporting these people to, I emailed, I wrote a letter. I tried calling and I tried to get in touch because I just wanted to figure out how I could go to the festivals for free. Was the next thing. Again, I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to start a business to make money. I just really loved going to these events and, trying to be cost efficient as a 23-year-old would be, who was just starting his professional life. I never heard back from the festival company, and I had collected all this data and all these riders, and I had this kind of customer base, and I'm like, well, I can try and throw my own concert. So on my 25th birthday, I threw my first ever event after running party buses for a year. I leveraged all the emails I had collected from running the party buses, and I threw my first event, and it went off without a hitch and was a great night. And from there, I went on to probably do 200 events. And eventually I got acquired by Relentless Beats, which was the company I was running the party buses to. So they acquired me and I got rid of my business, and I went on to take a full-time role with Relentless Beats, which they're the largest independent concert and festival producer in the United States that's not owned by Live Nation or AEG. So I just completed 8 years there of, building a department from scratch and being on the ground level of watching that company really scale. And so artist management was the next thing in that process. I was around DJs all the time. I learned how to DJ. I was with other DJs, and, I had all these shows I could go book DJs on. So it made sense. Like, well, why don't I take on an artist and work with an artist? I can plug them into all my events and leverage my events to get them to other events. So again, it was a very organic.
Talk about your artists. You know, you've got several artists on your roster. You know, looking on your website, and the website, if anyone wants it down the bottom, it's empowermentmgg.com. You know, tell us about some of the artists that you've got on your roster and sort of what people would expect to see from some of your artists.
Yeah, right now I got 2 artists I'm working with Carrie Keller and Sherm. Sherm's the A&R of Hood Politics Records, which is a very emerging, fast-paced record label. It's run by DJ Susan, who's, you know, he's been touring around the U.S. and doing some really big things. I have Carrie Keller, who I worked with. We just came off playing 34 shows in Q1 and Q2 between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. She just had a release on a UK label actually called V-Tracks out there with one of my good A&R buddies, Roman, who runs Vivifier. So right now, just the 2 artists. I've probably worked with about 9 artists over the years. 2 Billboard tracks, 1 top 25 US dance radio. And then we actually hit a #1 on Billboard with Tidy with one of his records, Redefined. And last year a couple years ago, I had Please and Thank You. We had a record do 77 million streams, and we actually landed in the EA FIFA Sports video game, which was really cool.
Do you know what? I had somebody on one of my shows who said that for me, being a man, I'm playing FIFA since like FIFA 1. You know, that's how old I am. Okay. It must be the biggest feeling playing football and then all of a sudden listening to your own track before that game starts. You know, it must be amazing.
Yeah, so it was cool. So, you know, I've worked with a lot of records. I mean, I've worked with every record label from Hexagon to Revealed to Dim Mak to Insomniac, and really everything in between. And you know, I've always had kind of a versatile roster, and it's opened me up to work with so many publishers and distributors and labels and event promoters. And through that, I've just met so many people and built some incredible relationships over the years.
And still have your party buses?
No, the party buses ended when I went to work for the festivals full time.
I would have kept one at least. It must be fun.
They were a good time. You know, everyone else is waiting in the cold at the end of the night, and everyone's coming on my party bus. There's water when you get on. And it was really the community. I would watch people come on the buses by themselves, and then by the end of the night, they're coming back with 5 or 6 friends on the bus. And then you would just see these friend groups emerge. I know people that went on to meet people. They met their significant other on the events or the party buses I run. And I think that's the beauty of creating these spaces is you watch the friendships and the people that come together through something you created. And there's just no other level of fulfillment that hits like that.
Definitely. And, you know, especially for independent artists. And I think for me, the time that I've spent the last 6 years, you know, being more involved in the music industries as a manager rather than as a singer-songwriter, you know, there's so much enjoyment out of seeing somebody make it. You know, get that big, you know, record into a chart or get that record into a movie or a game, or for a manager that feels so good that you were part of setting that up or being part of, you know.
You play a small role, you know, like ultimately I can't produce music, I can't sing or songwrite, but, you know, I know how to get people to work together. And that's really always been my superpower on that front. But you know, the beauty of artist management is like watching someone achieve more than they thought they were capable of. And that's really what it is. You're trying to help this person go accomplish something that's so difficult. You know, the odds of making it as a full-time world touring artist are, you know, exponential. You know, there's a slim percentage of people that get to do it. And so helping these artists go to achieve such an outlandish goal is fulfilling because it's so difficult to do. So the second you start to have any form of success, it's beyond rewarding.
What is it about the independent music industry at the moment? You know, there's a lot of discouragement. There's a lot of people feeling like, you know, what's the point? You know, especially here in the UK. I'll give you a good example. We've got many venues which are closing down. You know, the finance side of it is really difficult at the moment because money is very difficult. And I think independent music, you know, if anyone asks me, what do I listen to on the radio? I listen to independent radio. I've got my own radio station because actually I prefer independent artists.
Yeah.
But I think the last couple of years, there just seems to be this real sort of downness about having to fight all the time to try and get themselves recognized. It's almost become a fighting business rather than an enjoyable business. What, you know, in your eyes, you know, what's going on in independent industry at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, a lot of these artists signed up to be just that. They signed up to be artists. And now you have to create content. Now you have to market. Now you have to get people to pay attention. And now you have to do all these things that isn't the art, and so many people got in this just to create music, but now it's like, you need to be a content creator. You need to be a social media marketer, but at the end of the day, it's also the most exciting time to be an independent artist, because now you have all these tools. 30, 40 years ago, you had to mail your cassette or a demo into a label and pray to God they saw value and sign you. And, I'm watching plenty of artists go on and live full independent careers without having to sign a label, without having to take on a manager, because the tools and resources for you to be successful on your own are there. It's a matter of you committing yourself to them and using them and then executing. And that's really what it to is, people can create this music, but they can't always execute when it comes to the business side. And I think that's where management comes in on that front.
Exactly. I am going to build this into the show now, and I'm going to put this on because I'm going to get screamed at, because as soon as we mention this word, everybody jumps in. Okay, let's get it over and done with. Okay, we're 15 minutes in the show. Let's go on to this AI, this magic AI discussion, because it is splitting people up in the music industry to the point where either people are quitting or people are actually becoming so successful, then they get into number one without having to sneeze. It's literally, they're on the plate for them these days. Yeah. So, Jason, you're a young man, okay? We had a really fast discussion yesterday into making your picture look realistically you, okay? Because AJ doesn't have the time to get a graphic designer in, because he's got so many people he's got an interview. He uses ChatGPT. Everybody knows, and I'm quite happy to say that I use this. Poor old Jason yesterday, his picture was morphed, and I don't think mine looks any better. Actually, it makes me look a bit younger, but there's a few more wrinkles. But we used AI to produce the picture for the show today, okay? But Jason, you're a young man who is coming into the music industry, into a genre which is very technological anyway, in terms of the genre itself. But
you could argue that using a DAW and making all the sounds in a DAW is cheating, and you're not actually playing all the instruments to make your song. Like, I can't believe you're cheating and using Ableton to make your song instead of recording all the instruments yourself. Technology always expands upon itself. So, I could argue and say people using Ableton are cheating. They're not playing instruments to make their records, And
I don't know. People don't see that, though. They do not see the DAW is electronic. They don't see it as AI.
Well, I believe it's level of skill.
It was in the 80s.
Yeah, there's still such a level of skill that goes into using a DAW, though, and building that. Like, you have to understand music theory and arrangements, and there's so much complex thing. And now it's like, AI is taking the complexity out of things, which when you remove the complexity of something, you almost remove the soul of that thing. And so, if you're using AI just to produce a result and you're not using it as a tool in that process, then, that's where I think people are starting to try to draw the line. And I'm watching producers call out other producers or musicians for using AI online right now. And these, I guess you can kind of call them purists, are really roasting these people that are just fully pushing out AI slop music. And so now it questions is like, what happens to the soul of art? And that's the moral question that we in the music industry and we as just humans in general are going to have to figure out. But at the end of the day is like, you can't be AI, so you can't create all these things on a whim. But at the same time, AI can't be human. So, you can complain about what's happening here, or you can lean into the things that make you human. And that's storytelling. No AI can tell your story for you. And at the end of the day, it's not enough these days, even before AI music, it's not enough to be just a good producer. You need to be a good storyteller. What are your values? What are the things you stand for with your belief system? I don't want to support just a good artist. I want to support a human that aligns with my values and my beliefs. Some of my favorite artists I like because of what they stand for. They happen to also make good music. And so you got to lean into the things that make you human at the end of the day.
Definitely. And I totally agree with you. I'm 100% on that. And I think the businesses are starting to see it now. I was looking at some of the articles from Suno this week and also Spotify. Spotify are now labeling AI artists if they feel that they are purely AI.
Mhm.
You know, they're starting to put a rubber stamp on
Beatport,
them.
Beatport just
Yep.
launched that as well. They're watermarking it and flagging it, and you know, we're heading towards a point. Even like your news, you know, like the images and the videos are getting so realistic. Like, you know, how do you discern when you go online? How do you discern the real world from what's AI and what's not real?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think it's going to be really interesting to figure out how we as a society decide, you know, hey, is it a watermark? Is there a thing that's flagged so I know this is AI? You know, because otherwise, how are you going to differentiate it?
And you know, to me also, you know, I think with the companies starting to lean to what we're concerned about, I think we are going just through a transition at the moment. You know, I can see Suno now are going to look as though they are going to the door pace program. You know, I think we aren't going to see the Suno 999 job that anybody becomes a musician. I think that's going to disappear in the next year or so. They have just brought out their new, you know, 5.5, which looks more like a DAW project. You have to pick the instruments yourself. You can add voices yourself. And, you know, I think they're starting to realize that actually it was fun at the beginning and it was clever because no one had seen it before.
It's new.
But I think they are starting, and it was new. Everyone was excited. But I think they've started to see the divide in the music industry about how many people are concerned about the human aspects of it.
But
and I think
everyone on innovation that goes through the wall first gets bloodied. You know,
exactly.
like you have to have the pioneer in anything, and the people do it. And maybe it's not Suno. Like I'm assuming it's probably some company that might not even exist yet, looking at what they did and saying, all right, let's do it. Let's take a different approach here. Because they saw like, okay, they built the program really well, but their PR and marketing to the industry that they're trying to fit into is awful because all the purists are rejecting it.
Yeah.
So
this is the difference for me. You know, being a manager of a company, you know, I can see where people get to it when it becomes to music and voice and writing a story in a book and, you know, writing a song and things like that. But marketing and doing your posters and putting yourself out there using AI, I personally think it's quite clever. And I think for those people who now have got to become a band or a DJ or a singer, actually knowing that you've got to become a business as well.
Yeah.
I don't think you should be scared of AI. I think you should use it just to get that process out quickly.
Well, at the end of the day, whether you want to, if you're not using it to some degree, you're up against someone who is. They are going to move faster. They're going to move more efficiently. They're going to, you know, move. And again, it comes down to how do you use the tool? You know, if you're using the tool just to be your entire brain of thought, then in my opinion, I think you're using it improperly. But if you're using it a tool to combine and take your original ideas and organize them, absolutely. But you know, like even in the last like months, like I've built probably 6 websites in the last months, and that would have cost me so much more money and taken me months on end had I gone and had to design them by hand myself. You know, so what I'll do is I'll use the AI to get certain places, and then I'll go in and physically edit and move things around where it is. But I'm saving some time during that, you know, trial and error process. So my gap between trial and error is much faster to find out what works and what does not work.
Yeah, definitely. And we could go on about AI all day, but I think that the overall message for me, for people is don't be afraid of it and use it to your best helpful knowledge. You know, at the end of the day, coming into being a promoted artist or managed artist, you know, there is cost. There is cost. There's a tool, and I think if you haven't got the finances to be managed or promoted, then don't be scared to use it, you know, and help you. Don't feel as though you're stuck. Even if it's doing about posters. I've seen that argument.
Yeah,
God knows how many times over the last few weeks. Yeah. Oh my God, you're using an AI poster. So all I want to know is where I'm going and where I'm playing. It doesn't really matter if it's AI or not.
For you, it's a little different. You know, like your core competency is getting on, educating, and broadcasting the message to the world. You know, it's not like you're not positioning yourself as this creative artist who's creating art. You're operating a system to get a message out. And so I think you're using the tool necessary. Now it's like if you're an artist and you go to make album artwork and you put up like an AI album artwork, now it's like, again, the word artwork, you know, now you're starting to integrate AI into art. And that's the line, I think, and it's tough. I have so many friends I've known that have spent so much time learning to graphic design and build these things. And, it's in a matter of a year, their jobs and identity are becoming obsolete. And I do respect the artists that are still out there making their own artwork. Because that is like the album artwork is part of the art of the record. It's a cohesive package. Now, in the way you're using AI are, again, like your core competency is your message and getting things out to the world. I don't think an AI poster, I think that's a tool and an enhancement for you to get to your core competency. Now, an artist, their core competency is art. And that's where I think the line gets kind of blurred in AI.
Fantastic. I love the way you're thinking. I also love the way our guests are thinking as well. Mambuda Fred from Uganda. Thank you for joining the show. I hope you're enjoying the show over there. So, Jason, just to let you know about Mambuda. Mambuda has an orphanage over Uganda. He is a music teacher. So he teaches music to the children who are within the orphanage.
Amazing.
And basically will teach them music and also English and football and God knows what other things that they do. But he's part of our academy. So Mambuda, I'm glad you're listening today, mate, because at the end of the day, we would like to see how we can help you over there in sort of third country worlds where they're not going to be in the luxury of what we have over here in the UK and over in the US, and sort of technology to them, they're very far behind, So Mambuda, thank you for joining us. And if you've got any questions, Mambuda, please just put them in. I'm sure Jason will be happy to answer any questions in relation to the music industry itself.
Absolutely.
Okay, so in relation to, being a business owner and being sort of into PR management and, that day to day, give me a bit of your life, what's it like sort of getting up and being Jason?
It's different every day. And that's kind of the beauty of being an entrepreneur and just working in your own world is it's constantly changing. It's different. I'm not stuck in the same routine or structure every day. At the end of the day, especially working with artists, is I get to use all my skill sets. And I think that's what attracted me to artist management, because I get to think like a business owner. I get to think like a creative and an artist. I get to come up with content strategies. I get to go negotiate label deals. I get to negotiate bookings. I need to try to come up with tour routes. It's always changing and it's always different, but it utilizes all the skill sets I've built over the last 10 years working around music. And being a manager is the one thing that truly does that. If you work and you just throw events, you're never working with the labels or the publishers or the distribution companies. You're just trying to throw the events, and on the flip side of that, if you're just working with artists, you're never building an event, trying to sell tickets, marketing tickets. It's just different being a promoter. And I'm very fortunate that over my 10 years in the music industry, I've gotten to do both. I've worked with the largest independent promoter in the US, and then I've also gotten to work with world touring artists as well. And so it's made me really multifaceted where I touch everything in the music industry. And I think that's kind of been my favorite part about it. But every day is different. One day I'm working on a tour, another day is a label negotiation, another day I'm working on a brand sponsorship or partnership. And it's just staying fluid with all the different opportunities and trying to manage them.
I agree. Yeah, I was doing that in my sleep last night. I was just thinking the amount of things as we do as a company, obviously people know me more from Phoenix Rise, which is my main company, as an artist manager. And you don't know what your day is going to look like. It changes every single day, particularly for the artists, because there's so many opportunities out there for artists. And I don't think they realize how many opportunities there are out there for them. When we think about all the strands of what a musician or a band can achieve, there's a lot of strands. You were saying for your friend, going into sync licensing.
Oh, absolutely.
We're trying to get involved more, with the Scene Project and, Phoenix, so sync licensing for you. Yes, obviously that game, but have you had any other artists who have sort of made it in the movies?
I worked with Tidy, and he scored Disney on Ice in 2018 and 2019, which was crazy. He did some producing for Nickelodeon in that world. So we had an entire film and score agent along with his booking agent. I've had artists wind up in Japanese workout videos that we got a licensing deal from. I've had casino games inside casinos have used our music. We've had music go on shows on MTV and Peacock and Hulu. and I've watched these records get used for commercial uses in that front. So, you know, sync's always a great place to be. It's another avenue for artists. It's a hard one to get into, but you know, if you have the right partners, it's a great opportunity. You know, merchandise, ticket sales, brand partnership deals, publishing, neighboring rights. There are ghost producing. You know, I've lined up my artists to ghost produce for other artists and make music, which, you want to talk about the original AI music is ghost producers, you know.
Yeah, I remember one of my first songs being from a ghost producer in Africa.
Yep.
He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
There are tons of touring artists right now who have used ghost producers for the last 4 or 5 years, and they've made an entire touring career. And I think that, there's people in the industry does look down about it, but at the end of the day, they're still touring and doing the thing. Because the global audience isn't paying attention to that. They're not paying attention to how the music's made. They're looking at the final result. Like if you're a standard concert goer, I'm just looking at the lights, the lasers, and the songs coming off the stage good. Does this artist make fun and engaging content on social? Is it educational content? Is it funny content? Is it inspiring content? Those are the things people are grabbing to. The music's just the soundtrack to all that these days. I would say 80% of this game isn't making music. It's building a brand and an identity that can build community.
Brilliant. I love that. And I think, where we've got days at the moment where we're all concerned about where our next gig's going to come from, I think musicians need to be looking more holistically about how they use their own selves to branch out. We've got things like TikTok. I've been part of TikTok for the last couple of years, delving in and out of TikTok. But the market in TikTok, in terms of busking, it's the new modern day busking. So if you've not got a gig, why are you on TikTok? Because you're going to be earning money.
Yeah, and we live in such an interesting thing. Like, you can have 500 followers and you can go post something that can get 1 million views. Like, what a time and opportunity we are sitting in to be alive. Because 30, 40 years ago, you couldn't have gotten to the masses like that. And what this has done is the internet has leveled the playing field for everyone. And it's just, every time you post, it's a chance to hit that lottery ticket and go. But you have to get your reps in. And I think that's the biggest thing for artists. And they don't want to, I'm not a content creator, I'm not a social media. And then well, then great, you're not going to be a successful musician either in 2026. So
I love how you said that. I love how you, I've been saying that to people so often lately. Yeah. When they say, coming to me going, my numbers aren't very big at the moment, what am I going to do? I'm like, I don't know, you tell me, what are you going to do? Yeah. Get your reps in. You've got to do it. Those content numbers do not move by themselves.
Yeah. And it's paying attention. Okay, I put that out. Hey, this direction or idea of content did not work. Take it back to the lab, tweak it, and put it out again. Same thing you do with music. Your first song isn't your best song. You put it out, you get feedback from the world, you see it, then you go back to the DAW and you work on it again and you put it out. Content and art is the same thing. All we're doing is compounding iterations of what we're doing, because that's the human experience, is to create something, learn from the creation, go back and make it better and put it out again. No one's version 1 looks as good as version 6, 7, or 8. And time and reps. And I don't care what industry you're in.
Well, I don't know. There's a few exceptions over here in the UK, like Timmy Mallet and, sausage roll songs and things like that. They seem to be like a gimmick that gets you to number 1 straight away. I did try an X Factor in 2015, but it didn't quite work out. Yeah. I sort of ended up making the final rounds, but I didn't get there. But at the end of the day, for most people, who don't get in a gimmick or just an automatic hook, it is hard work, reps, and basically keep time.
It should be hard. It should be hard. You want to be a touring artist. You want to do something that everyone in the global population wants to do and live a life that everyone else is chasing. There are hundreds of thousands of songs uploaded to Spotify a day. Yeah, it should take you 1,000 posts, and like if I went to an up and coming artist and said, hey, your music's going to blow up, but you need to post 3,000 times before that happens. What's that artist going to do? They wouldn't be able to post fast enough. But the problem is you don't know when the result's going to come, and it might be on rep 100. It might be on rep 5,000. The difference is who's willing to find out. And the people that are succeeding are the ones that are going and doing the reps until they find out.
Definitely. I totally agree with you. And I think the future of music is this. And I think if people listen to it in the way we've talked about it today, I'm quite excited by the music industry. I'm quite excited in the fact that in the modern day of the music industry, we have so many outputs that we never had before. You know, I went busking with someone the other day who was 12 years old, and he turned around to all of the adults and said, I don't understand why no one else is out here with me. I'm 12 years old. I'm busking. I'm in a street where I'm in a seaside town where everybody apparently loves music, and I'm the only one out here. And he was talking like this quite openly. He was a very grown-up young man on his microphone, and people were clapping him for it. Because adults weren't getting out and busking themselves. He was earning all the money. His pocket money was great for that day. He was taking £10 notes. He was rich. And everybody adult-wise are moaning about the fact that they're on the dole and there's no money around, and this 12-year-old's just taking all their money.
It's your mindset. It's it's having the mindset of abundance, and that's a choice. So you can look at all the things you don't have, or like, wow, look at all the tools and opportunities I have to gain what I want. 30, 40 years ago, you couldn't go make music. You had to have a recording studio, and you had to have all this technology, and then you had to get a label, and you had to hope someone discovered your music. Again, we live in the best age. Like you said, you can have a 12-year-old in his living room on his computer making the next hit right now. That could not have happened 20 or 30 years ago. And so it's allowing the people that are truly willing to find a path to gain what they want in life.
Fantastic. So as we do normal, and the reason why we're bringing Phoenix Connect to you as musicians, because you always turn around to me and say, AJ, it's great to talk the talk, but where should we walk the walk? Well, we are going to walk the walk together, because these businesses are going to bring you ideas which can change your futures, okay? So at the end of the day, I don't bring people on just for the sake of bringing people on. As you know, with me, I do bring people on to try and bring ideas into the community and be able to collaborate with our businesses and worldwide to actually help musicians get into the music industry and give them the tools that they need. So there is lots of different, like productions, PR management, artist management. What makes Empower so different to everyone else? What is it you're going to give different to everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. One, it's education. That's tool number one, and the thing everyone needs to invest in and foremost. Like, no amount of marketing, no amount of PR, no amount of having all the fancy studio tools, bells and whistles is going to substitute for educating yourself on these things. I work with my artists, like, learn how to really run their project as a business, to think like a CEO while maintaining their creative control. And what we really focus on is we focus on brand development and community development. Your brand is your identity in the forward-facing thing you're putting out into the world. And 9 out of 10 artists I meet with can't even tell me what their brand archetype is, which is something we lean into so heavily, because every brand in the world has an archetype. Nike's a hero brand. Lego's a creator brand. Patagonia's an explorer brand. You go into the DJ world, Martin Garrix is a hero brand. Dylan Francis is a jester brand. He connects to his audience through comedy. Daft Punk is a creator brand. They created the pyramid. They created the helmets. They created the suits. They created some of the earliest sounds of electronic music. All these brands fans identify with and build community with because it's how they identify within themselves. So I think learning how to really build into your brand archetype is foundation starting number one. And then again, how do we build community around that brand identity? The best artists I see now, they have their Discord group chats where they're talking to their fans every day. They have their Lalo messages. They're going live and they're talking to their fans and audience in live time. They're staying after the shows to go meet the fans in the audience. Human connection is what wins over everything. And that's really what I try to lean with my artists, is how do we build that brand, and then how do we connect to community? And so that's our core focus.
Fantastic. And I will be bringing to you live on Phoenix Connect very soon an interactive app where you can send your own personal message like a hologram. So somebody has developed basically a message like an avatar where you leave a message to your fan, and basically rather than the message comes up, you come up.
Yeah.
So it's like, hi, it's AJ. How you doing? How's your day today? And it's like literally you, rather than a message. It's more, it's not human-fied, it's an AI, but it's still giving a verbal message rather than a text message. Because I was speaking to someone today, text messages for me, I just feel as though that's just the way we all talk to each other, even if we're sitting next to each other.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And it's another use of technology that can go, but you know, at the end of the day, I think humans are going to crave in real life connection more than anything as technology advances. And I think that's the beauty of music and live events is, you know, it's going to be the place people are going to congregate to in the next year, because we're going to be so trapped in this technological world that we're going to crave human connection.
Do you think we are ever going to get to the point where we're live at an event with Elon Musk's robots? You know, are we going to have another Queen come out of Elon Musk's robots?
my dream would be to get with Elon and get to Mars. Someone's got to throw the first festival on Mars. I would love to be that person.
That would be great. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? I was going to say, that was like my last question for you. You know, the dream of yours, you know, where would your company be at the very best? You know, what is your dream for your company?
My dream is to impact as many people as possible. If I could make the music and produce it and unite people through music, I'd be making it. That wasn't my skill set or thing I leaned into. So my job is to empower those around me who have those skill sets to go make the impact. And, you know, the success in my life, the more I've helped everyone else accomplish their dreams, the more I've actually started to realize my own. So that's why I call it empower. My job is to empower others to go chase their dream and chase their goals. You know, I fell short of playing professional baseball, which was my dream for 20 years. And the reason I relate to artists so much is trying to become a world touring artist is just as difficult as to become a professional athlete. You have to be in the top 1% in the world. And that's why I want to go work with artists. I want to go take on the most difficult thing. And I want to see people do more than they believe they're capable of. And that's really what a manager does.
Fantastic. I love the way you're speaking, and I think your company's going to do absolutely amazing and do some big things. And on behalf of all of our guests and behalf of Phoenix Connect, you know, we wish you luck for your business. We think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic business. We're going to keep in contact with you through Phoenix Rise, because I think, you know, for our listeners out there, for those who touch on Phoenix Rise and the Scenes project, I think Jason would be a great addition to the calendar. What do you reckon, ladies? You know, Jason being on the calendar for the Scenes project, I think all of the ladies will quite rightly say, okay. So we are going to leave Jason alert with his business. Wish him very much success. This is AJ from Phoenix Connect. We will see you very shortly. If anyone needs Jason, by the way, give him an email through his website, and I am sure he will answer any questions that you may have.
I would love to connect, please. AJ, thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing.
You're welcome.
You're providing such a great resource to so many aspiring people, and it's making a real impact. So thank you for having me join.
You are very welcome. Okay, we will speak after the show. Take care, everyone. We'll see you on Phoenix Connect tomorrow. Okay, see ya. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.